Welcome back, everybody, to your daily update on the state of the Malazan Empire. And it's pretty much on fire today because we're talking about the Bonehunters, Book 2, Chapter 1, which is Chapter 7. And shit is getting pretty real here. So we're going to talk about that. Quick update on the scarf. It keeps growing, well, slowly because, stuff. Someone has to print all these shipping labels because I have to send out 120 packages next Tuesday or Wednesday whenever my CDs arrive. So there's that. So yeah. Until then, let's talk about something really interesting, which is A Burning City, Chapter 7. Let's go. Cheers. All right, so as I said yesterday, I only went through that one chapter today, which is that chapter 7, which is about the Battle of Igatan. And I think that's enough for one day to read because, it is very much a set piece there. It's like almost a mini I don't want to say novella, but it has the whole chapter has the length of some of the novellas I've read and talked about recently. It's basically the same length as some of those. It is a whole kind of limited in itself kind of narrative there, and it's just one big action scene. And that's cool. That's actually very cool. When it comes to gigantic battles, that one is just very, very intense, and it has been done before to focus one entire story just about one battle. Famously, obviously, Joe Abercrombie did it with the Heroes, although it's like a 2 or 3 day battle there, if I remember correctly, like 3 days probably. But in general, it's sort of the same here with the Battle of Igatan being something of a miniature almost. It allows Stephen Erickson to play with the conventions and elements of war movies, battle movies, in the very, very visual descriptions and action sequences within that. It has some more thoughtful aspects later on that I find also very, very interesting and very much well done. The way we see basically both sides of the preparations, one through Korab, and then obviously the other side with the Malazans. All of that, you could just take that whole chapter in the Battle of Igatan and make one movie out of it, and it would totally work. Is what I'm trying to say here. Obviously, that's just on the surface. I mean, it also is like an interesting choice when it comes to like structuring the whole novel, that you in fact just put the entire sequence into one chapter. But it's something that Erickson has done before in At the End of Memories of Ice, where the entire Battle of Coral is also just one chapter, a very long one. That is the usual chapter length is like half or a third or even a fourth of what this one is. So it sticks out just like by being such a massive chunk of the page count. It just already shows you that this one is important. It's also obviously that big thing. I don't want to say I don't know. It's that big thing that all of the first chapters have been building towards. We have all these, chapter headings that are sources from Igatan or history about Igatan. We have everyone being afraid of Igatan, and then it does do exactly that. It's even worse than everything than the things that people were fearing before, because it's like this huge inferno, this complete conflagration. Everything is just on fire, like quite literally. But it also does something, and that's going to be the interesting bit there, is like how people deal with something like that, what comes out of it. And that's going to be probably explored in the next couple of chapters, because we're still rather at the beginning of the novel, right? This is just one fourth of about one fourth of the Bonehunters. So there's a lot of stuff going on that will happen later on and at the same time and so forth. So we'll see how that works. But just, the general way this is handled this time around, with, the cuts between different characters, all of that is just handled so, like, in a very visual style. You have these brilliant action scenes, like, choreographed really well. You have, on the other side, you have Korab losing faith in Leoman, like first regaining the faith in Leoman because he realized that he has a plan, and then realizing that how diabolic that plan is and how much he has misread Leoman all this time. Then finding his actual humanity, coming to that realization of that soldiers are just people, and digging himself through the whole, like, the underground of Igatan together with Fiddler, becoming friends, maybe not yet friends, but yeah, kind of friends with Fiddler. And the transformation of Korab there is just, like, really well done. I still find the character of Dunsparrow a very interesting one, because we basically know nothing about her. I mean, no, we know nothing about her. Like, even, like, anything else we'll learn about her will be later on, but she is there for whatever reasons. We don't know anything about her backstory. We just know that there's, like, for whatever reason, a Malazan officer in the city guard there. Yes, it's also a very powerful commentary, obviously, on what religious or any kind of fanaticism can actually do to people. The, like, both religious and all kinds of other ideological fanaticism, because you have all these warriors of the apocalypse going on suicide missions, like, very much, almost literally, on the, like, the parallels to the kamikaze fighting, kamikaze attacks at the end of Second World War are very, very powerful there, because you have basically the same situation. You have the whole, like, this being sort of the end game of the war. Everyone basically knows already they've lost. They even fucking, jump down with all these burning shit around them. They even, like, do that in, like, one or two powerful scenes where they jump, like, jump from the roof to on the floor to build that fire barricade and in the breach there. There is that in there. And obviously what Steven Erikson does there is he shows how fucking meaningless that is. And with Leoman being the disillusioned bastard that he is, we also we also see that the people actually commanding that kind of loyalty, how cruelly and coolly they calculate and just throw away those lives. And there's almost, like, a kind of disgust with Leoman at that point, where it's like, those fucking fanatics, I'll just, throw them away to get away. Like, I don't want to say hatred, but he certainly seems to despise these people. He seems to find something powerful within Leoman, within Korab. I guess it's the loyalty and honesty within Korab, in a way. But yes, the whole, like, the character of Leoman is one that is really interesting to explore in deeper detail, because he seems to be the ultimate cynic. But I'm not quite sure if that's actually the case. I would not call him an ultimate cynic in the end. I mean, he comes across as that, but there is some kind of desperation there. I feel like Leoman is the kind of character who really, the kind of person who really, really wants there to be something, just has never found it, and that's basically what's driving him to this desperation. So all he can do is just, keep on going until he finds that, and that's why he kind of makes that deal with the Queen of Dreams. And so that's definitely an interesting aspect to do it, to look at Leoman, I feel. And as I said before, like, I don't understand Leoman fully. I'm fascinated by the character, and would very much like to, think more and talk more about Leoman and what kind of person he is. Yes. The next thing there is like the way like we get more characterization of all these different soldiers with all their like oddities and weird quirks and stuff like that. I feel that's sort of the kind of thing that you see also with Glenn Cook's Black Company. And since we kind of all agree that a lot of the stuff Glenn Cook put into his Black Company novels, especially when it comes to characterization of soldiers, is just is like, you know, fueled by his experience or inspired by his experience in the service. I guess that's something that people who have actually been like in any kind of armed forces and actually, you know, been in that discipline, drilled, and also like dangerous situations, kind of understand in a way more that it drives out the quirks and oddities more, like I guess under like these under this extreme pressure. So there's that definitely. And the way, you know, it shows up is like we finally see like Helion's other side. I mean, we've seen her being drunk and being completely useless, sort of, and Herb being the one trying to, you know, take care of her. I have a lot of like respect and sympathy for Herb in that situation. I've been in sort of similar situations in my life. Well, don't get me wrong. I've also been in situations where I was more like the Hellion type of person. But you know, but we see that under pressure, she suddenly becomes like very, very like competent and ruthless and well good at her job, basically. A similar situation, I guess, is with Bomb that we haven't like, you know, we never like really met the guy before, but you know, we have this whole idea of him being like completely confused before the battle. These are things that I, you know, it's just like well handled, and the way those like those fights between the buildings are choreographed are just really cool. And it's sort of the first time that we see all of that like a lot of these like soldiers being more, I mean, we obviously had some contact with like some characterization and some, you know, look at Fiddler's Squad before, but now we get like more of the other soldiers having like their little small moments that characterize them. That's just really cool, really well done. And then you have that end, the death of Truth, which is really, really touching, both because of what he does, his sacrifice there, but also the effect that it has on Gessler. And because it shows Gessler's like very, very human core in a way, because it really, really harrows him. He's really like scarred by that. So there's definitely that in there, which I find just like really well done and really touching in a way. So yeah, there is that. Then obviously we have the other half after that huge like the actual battle. We have all the reactions. We have that I feel like very much a critical moment in Blistig's character, like Blistig's life. That situation when the whole thing goes up and he sees the adjunct in like in front of the fire, and he kind of sees how, or believes that he sees her dragging everyone after her while the world is burning. And I'm not sure if that's already like the turning point in Blizzdig's life, but it's definitely one on the way there. We also see the character of Sin just burning, being super, super powerful. Obviously, the question there that needs to be asked at one point or another is, was she just always really, really, really talented? Or did the effects of the rebellion, the things she suffered through, kind of break some kind of levy in her, like that make her so powerful? Something in the way that sort of happens or seems to have happened with Icarium, where like he also like broke some vital thing in himself, and now there is that problem of him becoming like this world destroying force at some point. But you know, something in a more human dimension, basically, where you have that situation. Um, then we also see obviously the adjunct taking that really hard decision, and that's another thing that I feel is it is explored with adjunct Tavora, and we will see more of that in the future. The fact that where we as readers obviously know more because we know that there's survivors in the city, and while some of the characters like that are outside, some of the soldiers, Blizdig and Keneb and who else, you know, also would probably like to linger a bit longer to, you know, hope for survivors, which by any stretch of the like imagination is impossible. It's just like that there is Sin behaving weirdly and not communicating, and Ferdinand's sword going off on a hunch. But any rational person would have to move on because of the plague moving in and everything. So Tavora does actually make that hard decision, and not even explaining it to anyone. She's just like, I mean, sort of explaining and just commanding it. And I feel that's one of the things, the burden of command is one of those things that get like often romanticized in a way. And I like the way it is done with Tavora here, because it's not glorified. She has to take that decision, and it will just make her more unpopular, right? That's something to definitely be thought about in like the way we in general look up to people who have the power to decide stuff, or have like are forced to make problematic decisions in a way. Yes, but then obviously like the other like big part of that chapter is that whole crawling through the tunnels, and that is just once again done really, really well for a bunch of reasons. The first reason there is the situation when they come in, they see Korab sort of defending the children, which he obviously has done before, and then Gessler like ordering. They just decide, the Malazan soldiers decide to take everyone with them and take the children with them, out with them, and that's essential because one of those things I fear, one of those things that are very, very important. I feel from my like very much not qualified perspective, right, is for people in an army, for soldiers, to keep their essential humanity, which is a very much a balancing act, because on the other hand, you are trained to kill someone, which is not something that comes easy to most people. Like, most people will not be able to kill someone unless it is in self-defense. So you need to kind of train people to overcome that inhibition. And then you're always in danger that that goes too far, and that's why you have discipline in an army, to avoid them like, you know, breaking like out of people breaking out of their humanity completely. But I guess most people instinctively realize that that humanity, that compassion, that thing is vitally important to being human. It's like an essential trait. And the Malazan soldiers, and before them Korab, just actually doing the human thing there is both obviously helping the children, but it's also to reassure themselves in a way that they are still human, despite all the brutality and all the inhuman suffering they have just come through. Like, despite all of that traumatic events, there's still human decency in there, and that's the same thing that then comes with Korab like helping Fiddler through the tunnels and everything. So that's I feel a vital aspect of that whole thing. Now we come to that whole tunnel situation, which I think, well, it's well done, there's obviously the symbolic thing of that I've spoken before about this whole idea of like doing a heroic journey in a way, or some kind of like harrowing rite of passage. I think rite of passage is quite literally in this case a passage, is very important there, because people going through that, traveling together through a very much exceptional shared experience, does something to people. That's something that we've seen before. That's basically what made the bridge burners, the people that traveled through Raraku and came out as something else. And now we have a group of people doing something very, very similar, only this time around it's just like those 3 days through the underworld of Igatan with all these things. We even have that. We even have their like supernatural, not supernatural, but spiritual awakening situation down there when they just take drugs. And on the one hand, it's interesting to see that it's just, drug infused. So you could take a cynical approach and say, yeah, they're just high. On the other hand, I don't feel that that's the point of that scene. There's a bunch of things going on in that scene, but one that I personally really found interesting is that most of those dream sequences down there are about people renouncing other gods, or the claimants, like the claims of their past, right? You have that scene with Bomb and all these weird gods from the Doll Honeys, like homeland. And then you have Smiles thinking about her past and like leaving her home and disavowing all the gods from there. And so far, it's not all of them. Obviously, Fiddler has been through such a rite of passage before, but for a lot of them, it's like them actually renouncing or disavowing or like pushing away their like past, which is kind of the point of a rite of passage, is to leave behind your past and accept a new thing, which we also see obviously with Korik, seeing this chant that helps him to deal with that and promise him to teach the child about that. So that's really a powerful thing there, and we will see how the people that came through that through Igatan in that way, how they are changed afterwards, or not. That's going to be like an interesting thing to look at. But once again, these small like situations where they're like spiritual dreams or whatever you want to call them are very much also, they tell us so much about the characters that we have not, like, like they're like sort of a look back at their past, or and their personality in a way, and what motivates them. They give us a lot about those, except obviously Fiddler, because Fiddler talks to Hedge. And that's a whole different thing, because what's going on with Hedge? Why is Hedge still able to communicate to Fiddler? Is he just a ghost haunting Fiddler? Is there more to it? I guess we'll have to find out at some point. But yeah, there is definitely that bit in there. I mean, this like literal rite of passage, I feel, is an important aspect for the rest of the novel, because what we've seen so far, what I personally also really enjoy about the both parts of House of Chains and the Bonehunters now, is the way we see that army coalescing and growing into it, coming into its own and developing its own character, right? The 14th Army, because we have at the beginning in Gardens of the Moon and Memories of Ice, we see the end of an army. We see the end of Dujak's army. We see the bridge burners dying. We see they already are their own legend in a way. And now we actually see the other part of that. It's like how an army develops its own character, its own personality, its own relationship with its commander, and so forth. And we see that, and now we have that literal rite of passage in a way, that is the events at Igatan. Yeah, there's that. What will happen to the other characters, to Leoman, Lorik, Dunsparrow? We will have to wait and see. But that's definitely the part that I thought really interesting about this one. Once again, the overall um, way this one big chapter is structured as this big chunk of narrative in the at the beginning almost of the novel. I feel we'll have to look back at it when we're done with the Bonehunters and how the novel is structured, how you have these two or three huge events basically holding up the story in a way. Because, this could almost have been the end of the novel, which it obviously is not. It's rather like in like the end of the first quarter, first third, maybe not even first third, but something like that. So how do you continue from that without having all being like the all the energy being gone from it, the all the power being out of the narrative in a way? That's something we will talk about tomorrow with the next couple of chapters of book 2. I'm certainly looking forward to it, and I'll talk to you tomorrow about that. And until then, cheers.